Hilltop. We started this event a couple of years ago with Jerry Levias coming to campus, and he was the first black scholarship player to play the Southwest Conference SMU Mustang back in the 60s, the 50s. 60. And so just to commemorate Black History Month and to bring it closer to home here on the SMU campus. Carter G. Woodson, who happens to be an Omega man, founded Black History Month in 1926. It was first founded as Negro History Week. And for you don't know, Carter G. Woodson, he was the second black to receive doctorate degree from Harvard University. And so he believed very deeply in commemorating all the things that African Americans learned in the United States and all the history that we've made. And today we're going to bring it home a little bit closer to home with a program celebrating Black History on the Hilltop with Anga Sanders and SMU 70 and 77. So I hope you enjoy the program. I appreciate you all for coming out. And here's our rendition of Black History on the Hilltop. Now we'll have Student Body President Jet Tour.
I'm going to speak a little bit, but I just want to talk about the students. And today we're here to celebrate the actions and the achievements of some SMU Mustangs that came before us. And these students recognized a lesson that we sometimes forget as undergraduates, and that lesson is the power that students have to make change. The students that I'm talking about, they were critical of their university, but not critical in an antagonistic way, but they recognized that SMU could be better. They recognized some problems that were going on at the university, and they realized that they had the power to make change to improve the school, to improve this university. And finally, recognizing those things, these students took action. And I think it's really important at this time in our history, in our country, to recognize how big that step was. Today there are budget shortfalls that are occurring at the federal, the state, the local level that are causing educational institutions to slash their funding. And they're causing our public schools to lay off teachers. They're also affecting SMU students. I don't know if any of you guys are familiar with the Texas Equalization Grant. It's a grant that goes to Texas students. And this past year, $6 million of that helped fund SMU students here to pursue their education. And right now, the Texas State Legislature is talking about taking that particular grant away. As we come together and we celebrate the actions of students that came before us, I think it's really important to recognize that even today, there are issues and there are things that we need to remain active on. The most important thing that I just want to say is that even though the 1960s were a very different time, the lesson that the students that came before us learned, the power of students, is still just as relevant today as it was for them. I think that we would be doing them a disservice if we do not make sure that our voice is heard, and we make sure that politicians today still make decisions knowing the opinions and the thoughts of current students just as it was back then. So having that said, I'd like to invite my students up to the podium. Thank you.
walking into his office. And we presented him with a sheet of paper that said list of demands. He was even more surprised at that. But let's talk about how we got there that day in 1969. When I arrived at SMU in August of 1966, I was a newly minted 17-year-old straight out of a small East Texas town in a segregated school system. My town had a population of about 25,000, and I had never gone to school with anybody who was not African American. And I had, like many young girls in my day, spent many years reading 17 magazine that told me that my college experience was going to be one of the most glorious experiences of my life, that I would meet the young lady, my roommate, who would become my BFF. And that probably in a year or two, I would meet the young man who would maybe become my Prince Charming. My experience was a little bit different, because I walked on this campus to discover that I was one of 10 black students at SMU. 6 of us were freshmen, 4 sophomores, including Jerry Elias, who got here in 1965. My roommate was a wonderful young lady, but we didn't have very much in common other than the color of our skin. And it looked like Prince Charming was going to have blue eyes. Okay, fine, I'm flexible, you know, it is what it is. What I had not anticipated, though, was something called Old South Week. Have you heard of it? Kappa Alpha Order, Kappa Alpha fraternity, every year would have Old South Week. And they had this beautiful Georgian-style fraternity house that looked like Terra, 2-story frat house. They also had a 2-story tall Confederate flag that they would drape from the top of that fraternity house all during Old South Week. The week would culminate with the Old South Ball, where they would dress up as Confederate soldiers and their dates would dress up in big hoop skirts, and they'd go to someplace, probably a hotel, and have the Old South Ball. That's fine. That's all well and good. Here's where we had a problem. When they took it to the steps of the Student Center, this one wasn't built, Alfred Lee. And they brought that Confederate flag out and draped it from the top balcony. And then they would symbolically secede from the university, and oh, by the way, might have a little slave auction while they were doing it. This was not what 17 magazine led me to believe. Now, when you're only 10 strong, you bond on whatever terms you have in common. So the 10 of us knew each other well, and by the second year, we had come to know each other well enough, and maybe we had maybe 15, 18 by that time. And we started to discuss how we felt about Old South. And none of us liked it. We thought it was a raging insult, slapping our face. And we went to the dean, Joe Howell, and told him that we found that to be an incredibly offensive event, and please stop it. And he just looked at us, shrugged his shoulders, and said, there's nothing I can do about it. They're part of this university. As though we were. And we were small, but we were still a part of the university. We didn't come in on a discounted tuition. We were here with all the costs and all the rights, or so we thought, of any other student. And so we told him, if you don't stop it, we quit. And so the next time they had Old South Week, there would be a crowd of students gathered out in front of Anga Lee, and they would make their rally and cry. The South would rise again, and of course we had our rally and cry by that time. Was if the South rises again, we got something for it. Jerry Elias, the star football player who had led SMU to winning the Southwest Conference that season, went up on the top balcony of Alfred Lee. And at that rallying cry, the South will rise again. Those of us who were sprinkled among the crowd pulled out little Confederate flags. You know those little 3x5 flags on a stick? We set our little flags on fire. He took his pocket knife and cut the ropes holding that Confederate flag and just pulled it gently to the ground. And that was the end of that nonsense on the steps of the Student Center. But the times being what they were, the 60s, there was a lot of turmoil and there was a lot of student unrest, and students had started to do exactly what Jake mentioned, which was to recognize the power that they had. You know, you are a force to be reckoned with if you only recognize it and grasp your power. And so we realized that there were some things going on here on this beautiful campus that we thought could be improved. For instance, there were maids in all of the dormitories. They were all black women, and yes, maids was the term that they would call. That's why I use that term. They would come in, they would clean, they would mop the hallways, mop the bathroom, clean the bathroom, come into each room, empty the trash, and if they liked you, they would make up your bed. So we started talking to them. We'd already been talking to them and found out they took home $85 every 2 weeks. They had families to feed, $85 every 2 weeks. There was no African American Studies program. There were no black professors. It is as though African Americans in America really didn't exist as far as curriculum. Now, that was nothing new to those of us coming out of the segregated school system. We knew that that had been sort of the outlook for a long time. But as Bob Dylan says, the times, they were changing. And we needed to implement some changes on this campus. And so by the time 1969 rolled around, we were 33 students strong. That included grad students, included athletes. And we formed an organization called Black League of African American and African College Students, BLAACS, which is the precursor to your current ABS. That was the mother of grandmother, maybe of ABS. And we started to talk about what we wanted, and we drew up a list of demands, and that's how we ended up in President Tate's office that day with that big sheet of paper that says, this is what we want, and we're not leaving until we get it. Well, this is SMU. It was then, and it still is now. So any type of civil unrest is kind of unheard of because this is a very contained campus, very calm. It's not Berkeley, you know, so you don't have riots or bottle throwing or any of that. You know, there really is a certain demographic that most SMU students fall into regardless of their race or ethnicity. And so we were very calm. We stated this is the list of demands that we have, and he told us to get out of my office and go back to class and don't come back here anymore. And we said we're not going anywhere. And thus began the civil rights movement at SMU, because that's when the negotiations started. We refused to leave. He threatened to expel us. We still refused to leave. President Tate called Dean Howell, the same one who said, your father, this university does nothing we can do about it. He came over to further negotiate with us and or threatened to expel us, and we didn't leave. We still refused to go. We were there for the duration. We weren't wild, we weren't rowdy. We were just determined because we had a mission to go. This went on for hours. President Tate conveniently left his office, and we didn't see him anymore. I never saw the man again until graduation day, which was the following spring for me. But Dean Howell and some of the other officials would come in and negotiate with us, and gradually they started to say, well, okay, we can give you this thing, but we're not going to give you anything else. This is ridiculous, and go back to class before we put you out. And we would give the same answer, we're not leaving. There was a minister, a prominent man who had run for the state legislature. Some of you have probably heard of Reverend Zan Holmes. He was in the legislature at that time, but he happened to be on his way home from Dallas, and he heard about this turmoil going on at SMU with the black students, and he just drove straight over to campus to help with the negotiations. Some of our demands were, we wanted an African American Studies curriculum. We wanted some black professors. We wanted the university to recruit 500 black students by the following fall. Well, I see now that was a little unrealistic because I still don't know if that student population is up to 500. It's 40 years ago. We wanted scholarships to African Americans for more than athletics. We wanted academic scholarships offered to primarily black schools too. We wanted a house. We wanted a place for our home. We couldn't participate in the Greek organization. They were segregated. And the only place, social gathering place that we had was one for these students. And so we wanted a place told them about the maids and how they took home $85 every 2 weeks and how their children were not allowed to attend school here like the students, like the children of other employees. So they came to realize that we didn't just walk in there on a whim. We were deliberate, we were thoughtful, and we had researched everything. 5 hours went on, back and forth. Gradually they would say, okay, we'll give you this, but now you really have got to go because this is all we can do. We looked out the window to find that the building had thousands of students standing out in front of it. Basically, we shut down the school that day. And the building was surrounded by police officers, sheriff's deputies, some undercover officers, and the FBI. Also in the crowd were the Black Panthers, who were our friends. They could come over and visit with us. And somebody had a radio. It was a transistor radio. You probably don't even know what a transistor radio is. It was a 1960s version of an iPod. So it had a radio, and we heard this broadcast. 30 Black students have taken over the office of president of SMU. 30 Black militants have taken over the office of president of SMU. We don't know if they are armed or not. And we were looking around like militants. Where? Nobody was armed. I think somebody may have had a nail file, but that was as serious as it got for us. 5 hours later, with the assistance of Reverend Holmes, and having withstood the threats of expulsion, we walked out with most of our demands having been met. There were some that they said, you know, we can't give you this, it requires money, we have to go to the board, we have to talk to the provost, we have to talk to, you know, the alumni, whatever. We'll get back with you in a week or two. And so, we had gone as far as we could with that. We were victorious, and we came out of the buildings. Flash bulbs flashing, newspaper reporters, and I think every cop in Dallas on the beat. That was the atmosphere at that time at SMU. We had support from some students and some students who were against us. But it really didn't matter to us because we were determined in our goals. Now, I had been an only child for 15 years, and a very sheltered only child, as a matter of personal note. And so my parents, who were both teachers, were very overprotective of me. So I hadn't told them that I was going in the building because I thought if I tell them, they're going to tell me no, not because they don't believe in the cause, but because they will think it's dangerous. Well, my cover was blown, and when the superintendent at the school where my parents taught walked down to my mother's room and said, Miss Sanders, your daughter goes to SMU, doesn't she? She said, yeah. She's not involved in all this mess that's going on up there. She said, I'm sure she is, because she knew her child. And yes, I was very much involved in it. The fact that we did that really had less to do with what was going on with us at the time. Yes, we wanted Black professors, we wanted to be recognized, we wanted to have some courses that talk about us. It had more to do, though, with you, because we knew whether we were 10 or 33 or 500, we knew that one day you would be here. And I couldn't stand before you today and talk to you with a clear conscience if I knew Old South League was still going on. And so we did that with the future in mind. We recognized the force that we had. And in the overall scheme of things that happened, the civil unrest and the civil rights movement, what we did was nothing. It was very, very minor, except it was major to SMU, because nobody ever rocked the boat like that before. And what I want you to recognize is, I think things have changed an awful lot on this campus. I hope you're perfectly happy with the state of conditions today. If not, whether you're not happy with the conditions at the school, whether you're not happy with conditions in the community or not happy with conditions in life, you have to look beyond yourself. We were other-directed. And I know times have changed for students. You have to be very inner-directed, and you're focused on the economy is terrible, how am I going to get a job? you know, what am I going to do? Can I find an internship? But I will submit to you this one statement. You will never make a greater impact than when you act on behalf of another person. You have to think outside a circle that's only the width of your shoulders or hips. It can't be all about you. Make it all about somebody else. You have the power of one plus another to reach out and touch the world. Students have incredible energy, they have incredible resources, and they have incredible passion. Find a cause that you believe in and do what you need to do to affect that cause. And I thank you. If there are any questions, I'll take them. Thank you for having me.
Talk a little bit perhaps about how you feel the SMU civil rights movement fit into the larger civil rights movement going on in the country at the time. Perhaps when you're inspired by something like that going on. How do you feel the SMU fit into the greater?
That's an excellent question. The question was, how did the SMU's actions fit into the larger microcosm of civil rights going on in the country at the time? Well, I was 14 years old when the March in Washington took place, and I watched all of that on television. I remember that march, I remember the speeches, I remember the civil rights workers that were murdered. But still, I came to this college with a great deal of naivety about what I was going to face. But as I said, it's still SMU, so it's not Berkeley. So the civil rights movement at SMU didn't take on the same violent tone that it did in many schools across the country. Yet and still, it was enough. You know, we may not have been perfect, but we were perfect for SMU. And so we actually were probably the biggest civil rights action that ever took place in Dallas, Texas, believe it or not. Because Dallas, for some reason, has a very, very calm demeanor when it comes to things like that. And so what we did was major for this city. It was even major for the state of Texas. They wrote about us in the Dallas Morning News and the Dallas Times Herald for a good 30 days. We were on TV, on the radio. There were editorials, some supporting us, some decrying what we did as anarchy. But you look at your time and you look at your place and you look at your cause and you do what you have to do. And it may seem small, as I said, in the microcosm of greater things that happened, what we did was minuscule, microscopic, but it was enough to make a significant change. Does that answer? Yes? The question was, did the white students treat us any differently after what we did? No, they really didn't. I'm proud to say that I have never experienced any overt discrimination, at least none that I recognize from a professor at this college. Of course, you know, college professors are notoriously liberal bunch, so I really wouldn't expect that I would have experienced that. We had white friends, certainly. They didn't treat us any differently. Certainly, as I said, there were groups who supported us. A lot of students supported us. A lot of students probably did not. But we didn't experience any negative repercussions from that. Now, we've spoken about Jerry Lyons, the star athlete basically in the Southwest Conference. What we didn't know, because the athletes were pretty much separate from us all the time, what we didn't know was that while we were doing all of this, and while Jerry was helping the Mustangs win game after game after game, he was experiencing tremendous turmoil, negativity, and pressure from other football teams and sometimes from being spat upon and having people make negative comments to him. We were not segregating ourselves, and I'm not saying you should segregate yourself. That's wrong to do that. But we had friends, we had supporters, we had antagonists, but never anything that was overt enough. I never experienced any name calling or anything like that, and I'm very happy about that. Because then you see you have to deal with that when that happens. Any other questions? What do I think of SMU today? I think it's a greatly different place. Beautiful place, that goes without saying. I think SMU today has a lot more diversity, and I think that they have a president in place who is committed to increasing the diversity of the campus. There's student outreach programs, and there are community outreach programs, and I think President Turner has taken to heart the charge of changing what has been a reputation for years for SMU. I don't think it'll come as any surprise to some of you that SMU actually has a reputation in the minority, at least in the African American community, as being an elite white school. I think he and many of the staff members and officials are committed to changing that perception. But of course, they can't do it alone. That takes you. It takes people like me. I serve on the recruitment committee. But the best ambassadors for that are you. You go back home, you talk to your former classmates or your friends, and you tell them it's a good school. See, bottom line is SMU is a good school. People have whatever perception they have of it, but it's a good place to go to school. And the friendships that you will make here, hopefully friends of all races and ethnicities, can carry you through life. You know, don't have a segregated outlook on that. It's not going to serve you well in the future, and it's wrong to do because you don't live in a segregated world. So I think SMU is, and has been, probably for the last 40 years, on the road to correct it, and they have already corrected most of the things that we address. So what I ask you to do is to embrace those changes, and if there are other things that need to be acted upon, take into consideration and act upon those. You know, no school is perfect. Neither is this one, but it's good. You will experience probably something that I experienced. I threatened to have a t-shirt made that says SMUO. SMUO, what is that? Well, that's the reaction that I get as an African American when people ask me, well, where did you go to school? And I say SMU, and they go, SMU? Yeah, oh. And it's a positive O. So you have to embrace that and embrace the opportunities and the friendships and the contacts that you find. Any other questions? No? Okay.
You talked about how SMU went about recruiting to the university because there were so few black at the time, and how your relationship with the university has kind of shifted over time throughout the last 30 years.
Okay. SMU did not recruit me because I couldn't play football. I had actually been accepted already at the University of Texas. This was giving my mother and father a heartache because their dorms were not integrated, so the black students had to live in something called co-ops. And as I said, I've been overprotected all my life, and so, you know, the fact that I was going to be in a facility with no dorm mother where they didn't lock the doors at 10 o'clock at night was freaking my parents totally out. In conversation with my doctor, he said, have you ever thought about SMU? And I had not. But I looked into it and I applied, and that's how I got it. Now, my involvement with the school after that, I have to tell you, when I got my diploma and walked out of SMU in 1970, I was done forever. I got my paper, I'm out. Hot. Gone. you know? And it wasn't because the experiences were negative. It was just that I hadn't found the bonding experience that many students find here. I hadn't formed those deep friendships. So I was out, and a lot of African American students had that same reaction. But, you know, a few years went by, and about 5 years later, I decided I wanted a master's degree, and I thought, where do I want to get it? And then I was school, and I'm like, yeah, you know, maybe I'll go back. And so I did, and I got my master's degree. And then once again, I'm gone. Several years later, though, I started thinking about the students who were there at the time. I started thinking about, I wonder if they're experiencing any of the same types of things that we did. And I wonder if it would be helpful to them to just have somebody who has been where they are. You know, there's a passage in the Bible that says, I sat where they sit. When you sit where they sit, when you sit where someone sits, you see what they see. And I had done that, so I came out to offer my services to the African American student liaison at the time, I won't call his name, to say, you know, if any of your students just need somebody to talk to about what's going on here, how they feel about it, you know, if they just need somebody to make them some cookies, give me a call. And he said, okay, fine. But he never did. Never called. Kind of hurt my feelings. So I didn't come back for a while, and then around 2000, I was recruited for a position and for an intern, and I thought to call SMU. Got in touch with Dr. Ainsley Curry, who was the intercultural liaison at the time. Ainsley invited me back over to meet some of the students and to speak to that student group. And I was welcomed and invited to become an active part of the university. It was something I had wanted to do for a long time, but I had failed to run. And so that started my re-involvement with SMU. Now, here's a funny thing. I went from student radical in 1969 to member of the alumni board now. Go figure. It's gone full circle for me. I'm committed to this institution and its students. I'm committed to the African American students, or any students really that want help, want feedback, or anything that I can do. So, you know, I'm all in. Now, it's been kind of a circuitous ride, you know, up and down. But that's it. So anything y'all need from me, you have what to ask. Any other questions?
If you guys were in the president's office, like, did you ever feel afraid that you would really expel you, or that you ever look a big leader that said, like, no, like, you're not
Well, the president of our organization was a student named Michael Morris, and I think they have a letter from Mike somewhere around here that he had written to the Daily Campus. Her question was, when I was in the president's office, did I ever feel threatened that they would actually expel us? I have to tell you, no. I had the hubris of the young, and so it never occurred to me that they really would carry through on that threat. Now, the interesting thing is, they called a couple of football players out into the hallway to say, if you don't get them out there, we're taking your scholarships. And they came back in, shaken to their core. And they tried to tell us, we gotta go. They've done all they can do, they're gonna take our scholarships, they're gonna put us out of here. But we said to them with one firm voice, they are not going to put every black student enrolled in this college out of school. The federal government shut them down. We're not going anywhere safe. So no, really, I never did have any fear of it. Might have been foolish, but I didn't. Yeah, sometimes you just have to take a chance on that, you know? Okay, so they put you out. Yes, that is a life-changing situation, but, you know, you can't always go through life fighting for a cause only until there might be a negative repercussion to you. So, that was it. I'm kind of stubborn like that. Anything else? Any other questions? You can ask me anything. 10 when I first came here. So we're like 10,000 and 10. Okay, that was my freshman year. By the time I graduated, probably 50, maybe 60. When we went into the president's office, there were 33 of us that went in there, and that was almost everybody. There might have been a couple of grad students or so that did not go. But yeah, and those 33 didn't all live on campus. So, you know, we had the townies too, but yeah, we were a definite minority. Definitely minority. In fact, only one time in my entire 4 years here did I ever have a class with another African American. One time. I don't. As I said, we bonded out of necessity, not out of common interests. And so some of those 33 had such negative feelings that I don't think you'll ever get them to come back out here. No, I don't. I ran into one on New Year's Day, as a matter of fact, in Dillon's. There are a couple that I am in contact with periodically, but for the most part, no. And I wish that I knew where they all were. You know, I think it would be a good thing if